Hello, my name is Nicole Carson-Bodie and I'm a portrait photographer. Because my favorite method for hand painting my backdrops is so easy and affordable, I decided to make a fun set of pink backdrops to add to my neutral favorites. In this video, I'm going to show you how I hand painted this set of 9x12 pink canvas backdrops. I'll show you where I bought my supplies, how I added my texture layer, and even how I fixed the color after I had used it in several photo shoots. And then I'll show you the final portraits. But before we go any further, please do me a quick favor and click the like and subscribe buttons below. I like to purchase my canvases from Amazon. These 8-ounce seamless canvas drop cloths are my favorites. 6-ounce and 10-ounce canvases will also work, but I prefer the 8-ounce. They're thick enough to easily paint on and light enough to hang on my Varipole system. I prefer to have my backdrops fairly monochromatic, so when choosing paint, I select 2 shades of the same color. To make it easy, I choose 2 neighboring shades on the same color card. I chose this medium shade of pink called Nana's Rose as my base layer, and this lighter shade, Sweetie Pie, as my texture layer. You will need 1 gallon of interior flat paint of your medium color and 1 quart of flat interior paint of your lighter color for one 9x12 canvas. I went to Lowe's and purchased the lowest quality grade of their Valspar brand of paint. It is a paint primer mix. Make sure it is the flat or eggshell finish. You want the least amount of shine on your canvas. You'll need 1 standard roller for applying your base layer, and you will thank yourself for having a paint roller extender rod so you can do all your painting while standing on your feet. I have found the best results applying my texture layer with a sea sponge roller. I purchased this one from Lowe's, but you can also find them on Amazon. To store the canvases once painted, I bought 2 2-inch by 10-foot long PVC pipes. The ceilings in my house are 9 feet tall, and even though the canvases started out as roughly 9 feet wide, I knew they would shrink once painted regardless of being pre-washed or not. So I had the PVC pipes cut to 8 feet 10 inches before bringing them home. The 2 inches of wiggle room would make them easier to store upright and stacked in a corner in my home if needed. One of the most commonly asked questions I see regarding painting canvases is whether or not to pre-wash them. In another one of my videos, I experimented with both methods and shared my results. I personally did not experience any advantage to washing them first, so I choose not to. I simply opened the package and spread out the canvas on my jumbo-sized ironing board and began to iron. I did not need to use any additional spray or product. I just relied on the steam from my iron. It took me about 30 minutes to iron each canvas. Once ironed, you'll need to either roll them up on your pipe or store them spread out until you're ready to paint. When selecting a space for painting the canvases, choose the smoothest ground you can find. A cement floor in a garage or driveway works great, but be aware of the stress lines cut into the cement. You do not want to paint over them or you will get a visible groove in your backdrop. When laying down your plastic drop cloth, be sure to pull it tight to avoid any large creases or wrinkles. I have learned these can create unwanted fine lines and wrinkles when painting the canvas. I do not find it necessary to tape down the canvas or the plastic. I started with my medium shade of paint for my base layer. I used a standard roller and began laying down the first layer of paint. You can use your foot to help keep the canvas taut while painting the corners and edges. I was generous with the paint and continued until the entire canvas was covered. It's very important not to paint over any large cut lines in the cement under your canvas. If you do, you will have fold lines that will be visible in your final canvas. So in between sections, I slid the canvas to avoid the lines. I also used some extra long poles and laid them down in the folds so I didn't accidentally paint over the cut lines. I live in Phoenix, Arizona in a very dry climate, so the paint dried quickly. I was able to immediately go back to where I started with the second coat of paint. I find 1 gallon of paint is just enough to apply solid coverage with 2 coats. For my texture layer, I started by cutting the top off of a used water bottle to create a disposable container. I filled the container to the first red line with water and then roughly to the second red line with paint. The result is 1 part paint to 1 part water. Then I stirred it thoroughly and poured it into the same paint tray I had used for my base layer. I ended up pouring in about half the quart of paint. I slid my sea sponge roller onto my handle and then wet it thoroughly before dipping it into the paint. It's important to roll the sea sponge back and forth to squeeze out as much paint as possible before laying the roller onto the canvas. Then I gently lowered the brush onto the canvas and immediately started gently rolling back and forth. I was careful not to apply a lot of pressure to push too much wet paint onto the canvas, which would form little puddles. I continued to gently roll the brush forward and back and sideways, covering the entire canvas. Again, when doing this step, be very careful not to run over any cut lines in your asphalt underneath the canvas, or it will affect the pattern of your texture layer. You will need to slide your canvas and plastic to avoid them. I continued to roll over the entire canvas and then went back over any areas that looked too bare or where I could see a recognizable pattern. The contrast between the medium shade of paint underneath the lighter texture layer was stronger when wet. Once dry, the two shades blended together, creating a beautifully subtle yet recognizable texture. I left the canvases in my garages to dry overnight before rolling them up and bringing them inside. Depending on whether or not I'm photographing dancers, families, or single portraits, I shoot in either my dedicated studio, which is in the guest suite of my home, or in my living room. When shooting in my living room, I'm able to set up my 9x12 canvas along the 12-foot edge, allowing for wider shots. Then I can lay down my second matching canvas along the ground. I overlap the ground canvas over the hanging canvas for a virtual seamless look. I now have 12 by 18 feet of photographable canvas. My first photo shoot with my new pink canvases was for my Portraits of Hope series with an incredible young ballerina named Natalia. I chose a white lace dress from my studio wardrobe for her to wear, along with a white flower crown. Natalia has long, dark, beautiful hair, but it doesn't hold curl very well, so we opted for a wig to make life easier. Having the 12 by 18 foot pink canvas backdrop for her photo shoot was amazing. She had plenty of room to move within, and I had to do minimal background expanding in Photoshop. For this breast cancer concept, I wanted her dressed in white with a long piece of chiffon fabric flowing behind her in the shape of the breast cancer ribbon. I photographed my model and the ribbon separately and then combined them in Photoshop. I explained this photo shoot and my lighting setup in more detail in a separate video. My dedicated studio space is 11 feet wide. I have a Varipole pulley system installed with 9-foot wide canvases hanging on them. I have dark gray, light gray, and brown backdrops I hand painted using the same method. In order to use these new pink backdrops, I began by setting up my portable backdrop stand in front of my Varipole system. I hung one canvas along its 9-foot edge. Unrolling the 12-foot length wasn't quite long enough for my photo shoot that I was preparing for, so I unrolled the additional 9x12 canvas and overlapped them at the bottom crease. Continuing my Portraits of Hope theme, I photographed breast cancer survivor Becky and her 2 daughters in my studio. The pink backdrop was a fun contrast to their dark hair and black dresses. Although I love how the pink backdrops looked in the 2 photo shoots, I felt like the pink color was a little too vibrant. So I went back to Lowe's and picked out a pink that was much more muted than my original colors. I brought along 2 blouses that were the pink I was wanting to coordinate with to match the color. I bought 1 quart in the flat finish of Radiant Pink. If I was starting from scratch, I would have used Rosy Hue as my base coat and Radiant Pink as the texture layer. Since I was only wanting to subdue the previous pink layers, I didn't think it would be necessary to paint a new base layer. I mixed a 1-to-1 ratio of the new pink color with water. Then I used my same technique as before to gently spread the new texture layer over both canvases. I pressed out as much excess liquid as I could before setting the roller on the canvas. I started in the corners and used a gentle rolling motion to spread the texture. I was careful not to paint over the cut lines in the floor under my canvas. I slid the canvas in between sections to avoid these lines. With the help of my husband, I did a quick photo shoot of myself testing out the new paint color with a variety of outfits. I love the more subtle tone and look forward to using these backdrops with future clients. Now that I have all my painting supplies, I can create a 9x12 canvas for about $60. It's $20 for the canvas and about $40 in paint. Now there is a cost of time, but I can offset that by either painting on the weekend, or if I'm lucky, I can enlist the help of one of my minions. And as a creative, there's something very satisfying about painting it myself. I hope this video helps you feel inspired to roll up your sleeves and paint your own canvas. Getting started is always the hardest step. Your canvas will be a one-of-a-kind work of art and you'll naturally develop your own look and style. If you like this video, please click the like and subscribe buttons below. Then I can keep making videos like this one to encourage you along your own photographic journey.